doing is creating an installation. It's a participatory installation, inviting people to come and stitch fabric, deconstruct old clothes, and then feed them through 6 overlocking machines arranged in a daisy chain. And so I'm working with fabric that comes from behind me, from the stitcher at the back, adding fabric to that and cutting and pasting in effect as I go along. The piece is about having a conversation, a non-verbal conversation through making. So through the stitching, through familiarizing yourself with the machine, the fabric you get, and thinking about how to stitch, you're collectively creating some strips of fabric that are then suspended above the stitches. We're hoping to create a whole canopy filling the structure that's built. At this rate, we'll have finished before the end of the fair, which is slightly unfortunate. So there might be a process of taking things off as well as adding. I'm not sure. It's an unknown quantity. And it's very difficult to gauge how big, first of all, to build the structure, because I wasn't aware how much fabric would be produced. And depending on how many stitches you have, we go at a slower or faster pace. But that's really determined by people walking through and getting interested. The piece coincides with an exhibition called Taking Time, Craft and the Slow Revolution, which I participated in. And I pitched this idea to Craftspace a while back. Now, Craftspace produced a show effectively with a curator called Helen Karnak. And Craftspace have had a link with Husqvarna, who distribute the machines, and they pitched the idea to the stitching show, knitting and stitching show, and it resulted in me being here today. So Craftspace have had this relationship with Husqvarna Viking, and out of that came this piece. I was quite interested. Years ago, when I did my sculpture training, I worked on an overlocking machine. I decamped from the sculpture department in an art school in Brussels to the fashion department. I got fed up with the noise and the smells and the dust and the hazards of working in a traditional sculpture workshop. So I went to the fashion department, and they'd had a fresh delivery of these, not this model, not this make even, but of overlocking machines, and I started working with fabric, and the work developed from there, and all the work I do now is relates to textile and or weaving in some way. And I think there is also this notion of being, despite the recession, of just taking more time to do things and appreciating traditional crafts, not being so focused on the end product, but the process of getting there also is an added consideration. Time spent making things is seen as productive and beneficial and therapeutic, and I'm sure all these people who come to the fair, have that or sort of bear that in mind in some way. This installment of the fair is the biggest it's ever been, and there's clearly a direct connection between the interest in craft and the numbers of people sort of walking through the doors here. Well, this piece comes out of a series I did called the Knitting Pieces, where people share circular needles and create a spiral of knitting. And the point of that was to focus on the making and the practice of doing over the end result. And so it's about the talk, it's about the social interaction, it's about the ideas that are exchanged while the making takes place. And this piece here is a variation of that. And so rather than me proposing an idea, and the traditional role of the artist is that of, is the person who brings a particular narrative, a set of ideas forward to then be debated. Here the ideas and the theme is really produced by, or is determined, let's say, by the people who get involved in the making of the piece. So I've turned the role of the artist on its head in a way, where I'm more a facilitator rather than a producer. And we've got 6 machines, 3 people sitting. We've set it so 3 people are working on the machines at any one time. 3 other seats are occupied by people who are just visiting and are getting interested as they see the piece, as they come across the piece.